Welcome back to Packs and Picks, everybody. Last weekend was the very first pre-release for Star Wars Unlimited for the Spark of Rebellion set, and I got to participate. And so I wanted to take a minute to go over the deck that I built for the event, talk about some of the cards, talk about some of the commons that I like and didn't like, and other thoughts on the event overall. And let's get right into it. So I've got most of the deck laid out here. We'll see some more of the cards here in just a second. I ended up going with a command and aggression deck, a green-red deck, mainly because of the events and some of the removal events that I got in the pool overall. I did end up going with Leia as my hero, or my leader, and that's mainly because I liked the look of the hero cards, the heroism cards in the pool over some of the villainy cards. So that's why I chose Leia. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of rebels in the deck to synergize with her and leverage her ability a lot. And I think that's going to be something that plagues Leia and leaders like her, like Tarkin here, who cares a lot about Imperials. I think it's going to be tough to play them in the sealed format just because you're kind of at the mercy of your sealed pool and if you get enough Rebels or Imperials to draft around. But when it does come together, I'm sure it's going to be great. That being said, I do think Leia and Tarkin will be really fun to draft around because you will be able to see a lot more Imperials and Rebels and start to pick them up in the draft and build around their abilities a lot better. So I am looking forward to draft with Leia and Tarkin. So that's a little bit on the leader. As far as the reason why I'm in aggression and command, let's take a look at some of the events that we've got. So the first one here is bombing run. So I had a good idea that this card was going to be good, but it ended up being even better than I thought it would be, just because of the nature of Star Wars Unlimited having the 2 arenas. It was pretty easy to be able to start playing units into one arena, like the space arena, let my opponent keep developing the ground arena, and then fire off this bombing run, and oftentimes you get like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 out of the deal. Sometimes if my units were getting outclassed in one arena, I would do like a suicide attack into a unit, bring them down to 3 HP remaining, then fire off the bombing run and clean up any units that were left over. So bombing run just turned out to be a really great addition to the deck and a really good card. Probably why it's rare. The other removal spell that I had, or removal event, was Carabast. So this one scales as your units get more damage. So it does work better if you've got a lot of grit in your deck or you're doing damage to your own units. There's more synergy there, but there's a lot of damage flying around in Star Wars Unlimited, and I found myself being able to play this for 3, 4, 5 damage pretty regularly. So a good removal event there. Open fire. What more can you say about open fire? Just a good, solid removal event. And strike true. Really like strike true. It's definitely a front runner for one of my favorite cards in the set, just with how flexible it is. So being able to use this with an exhausted unit, being able to take a space unit and deal damage to something in the ground arena, just a really flexible card and a really good removal event. Another one that I didn't really have my eye on, but it turned out to be a great addition, was the Hardpoint Heavy Blaster. So it has to go on a vehicle, but when you attack, you get to deal 2 damage to another unit in the defender's arena. And this turned out to be really useful for decks that were playing a lot of shielded units. So being able to get in and just throw that 2 damage over to a shielded unit, pick off the shield, and then deal with that unit later on down the road, just turned out to be really flexible and really helpful with the Heavy Blaster. And then a couple other events that I put in, mainly just to fill out the deck because I didn't have a ton of red and green cards in the pool. Keep Fighting, ready unit with 3 or less power, and Power Failure I put in there. I wasn't quite sure how many people were going to be playing a lot of upgrades. I actually didn't see a lot of upgrades being played in the pre-release, so this card turned out to be a resource most of the time, but it was there in the deck nonetheless. So those were a lot of the events, or all the events that were in the deck. And cards have performed a little bit better than I thought they would. Green Squadron A-Wing. So this is one that I didn't rate too highly. I knew it was a good card, but it wasn't like one of my top commons, mainly just because of the defensive capabilities, being a 1-power unit. So that's why I kind of knocked it to begin with. But man, this card turns out to be really good. So first turn of the game, getting to play this and then crack in for 3 damage on the second turn of the game. Really powerful. It often trades up as well, so your opponent plays a 3-4 cost unit that's got 3 health by its base. This thing often can trade up into that, get in its value, Green Squadron A-Wing, really good card. Probably never going to cut it from your red Heroism deck. So really like Green Squadron A-Wing. And then the keen-eyed among you probably might notice that I've only got 26 cards here with my events. And as I kind of mentioned, I was really struggling to find enough playables or cards that I was excited to put in my deck in the sealed format. Really amongst all the colors, even any other 2-color combination in my pool was really tight as far as card options. So I started to look out of aspect, and the way I started looking at it was like, are there any cards out of aspect that even with that additional 2-cost penalty would still be good in the deck? And I was able to find some, and I did put some in the deck with good results. So Outer Rim Headhunter, this was one that I put in. So for us in this deck, it's going to be a 4-cost 1/3. Not great, but I really put it in for the on attack trigger, where if you control a leader unit, you get to exhaust a non-leader unit. So I figured, at 4 cost, this is most likely going to come out when I do have my leader out already. So I'm going to be able to utilize that trigger more often. Another card, 4 cost Ozatec Gunship. So for us, it's 6. 3/4, so a 6-cost 3/4, not great. But really, I looked at this as kind of like a removal spell, or removal event with the ambush ability. So for 6, I could ambush this in, take care of something with 3 health remaining in the space arena. Asteroid Sanctuary. Now this is a card that after playing it in the deck, I think I would go to as an off aspect card really often. So at 4, a little bit expensive, but exhaust an enemy unit, give a shield token to a smaller unit of your own. This is a great card, I think, even at 4, at least from the limited exposure I had at the pre-release. And then the last one was General Tag. So he's going to be 4 cost in this deck because of the villainy aspect. So he's a 4 cost 2/2, but it turned out I had 7 troopers in the deck. So oftentimes he was coming out and dishing out 1, 2 experience tokens. So 4 cost, 4 essentially turned out to be just fine for this deck. So I went a little out of aspect with some pretty good results, and I'd encourage you to look for any opportunities as you're building your sealed decks that might be out of aspect. Overall, the game, really fun to play. I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of practice matches on the online client that was developed in the community, and yeah, it was really fun to play in person. I know it's not a new idea, but man, definitely don't underestimate taking the initiative. I know there were plenty of times in my games where either myself or my opponent had the opportunity to do maybe 1 more damage or 2 damage with a smaller unit, but it just made more sense to take the initiative and go first in the next round. So don't underestimate taking the initiative. And then also the resource system just feels really great at about every stage of the game. So if you got to take a mulligan and you get that mulligan hand, you've got a bunch of expensive units or events, it just felt great. Like it was easy choice to put those down as a resource. And then on the flip side, you go in the late game and you draw that cheap card like that Green Squadron A-Wing that's not really going to do anything for you in the late game. It felt great to resource that as well. So I really enjoy the resource aspect of the game, and just adds a whole nother layer to the decision-making space. As for the event itself, it was great. There's about 30 people in attendance. Everybody's really excited and really friendly. People talking about plays, talking about all the stuff they're excited for the game. Really good vibe. We did do 3 rounds of Swiss with best of 3 matches, so the rounds did go a little bit long, but time flew by for me, and overall, it was just really great. So that's kind of my experience from the first pre-release. Did you make it out to a pre-release? What cards performed well for you? What cards didn't perform as well as you'd hoped? Let me know in the comments, and stick around because I did go to a second pre-release and I will be showcasing the deck I made in that event very soon. I'll see you soon.